This is Chapter 7, Part 3. Um, all that what I just talked about from Part 1 and 2 are enumeration types with this. This is anonymous type. Now, to be honest with you, I never use anonymous data types out in industry before, but you need to know what it does exist with it. Anonymous type is basically it's an alias to your data type with this thing. So anonymous type values directly specify the declaration with no type name. I don't know why people use this, but for the purpose of the discussion is that if you remember, the syntax is enum in the enumerator, or that we just did with this, was that you had my sport was right before your left curly brackets. If you move my sport after this thing, this becomes an anonymous data type with it. I don't know why people use this, but here's the drawback with this thing, is that you can't pass or return anonymous type to and from a function. That's the first thing. The second thing is that values in one type can be used in another or be treated differently with this thing. So best practice to avoid confusion, define an enumeration type first, then declare the variable with this thing. So if you look at this right here, you can't pass foreign language cannot be assigned to languages with this thing. You see the problem? Okay, so that's the problem with anonymous data type with this thing. So what do I need for you to know from this thing? I will ask you on a multiple choice exam, quiz, whatever it is, that if you look at this thing, I will give you a syntax is which one of these are anonymous type. That's all you have to know. Know that it starts with an enum. There's a curly brackets, whatever the arguments or the parameters inside it, and it ends up with another whatever the identifier and a semicolon. Okay, that's what I need for you to know. The next part, which is aside from this, is called Typedef statement, used to create an anonymous alias of a data type of the same. So here's the syntax: Typedef, existing Typedef name, new type name. Okay, so Typedef does not create any new data types with this. It's just an alias that allows you to actually see existing data types with this thing. Okay. Back in Chapter 2, if you recall, the ANSI and the ISO standard, the C++ was officially approved in July. There is a test question. I do ask you to know this date right here with it, so please know this date. Most recent the compiler compatible with the ANSI stands are C++. Who are these people? If you recall, the ANSI, ISO people, and there's also a group that's put together the standard C++. They're the one who gives the definitions with this thing. They're the one that actually needs to tell us that what we need to do in our programming language. So the folks that program over in Europe, in China, anywhere around the world, they need to follow the standardization with this at the same time. For the most part, C++ and the ANSI standard are the same pretty much with it. Okay? Next part I want to talk to you about is the namespace. If you recall the namespace that we talked about a few minutes ago, is that in your skeleton you had your using namespace std. This is where I'm going to hone in and talk to you more about the namespace with this thing. First of all, namespace is a reserved word. Namespace tells you that when we talk about the namespace, there are things that you're going to actually look at. Let's see. So let's. I want to talk to you about namespace. If you think of the general syntax for the namespace with what you start out with is namespace, and then it's like a function you could write on your own with this thing, right? The issue is that over the years you got all different flavor of C++ out there. You have your Dev C++, you have your Microsoft C++, you have your Bourne C++, or these compilers come up with different type of flavors of C++ with it. So one of the things is that, again, we have to have some sort of standardization that everybody has to follow with this thing. So the common solution that a lot of vendors use is that they use this underscore. Okay, so let's talk about the syntax right here. You come up with a syntax that's called namespace. It's like a little mini function, all right? Namespace underscore name. So they got this underscore under the name with this thing. So the namespace that you're looking at it's like a declaration with this thing. So inside of this thing, I can put like constants and variables in here right before my int main. Okay, between my using namespace with it. So I can actually have namespace, namespace, underscore name. All my variables, all my members contained in here. Well, later on, what you're going to see is, for example, if you pull up the code that I gave you in example 7-8, if you look at 7-8, okay, in the namespace with this thing, let's see if this is the right one here. In the namespace that you're looking at, if you look at the problem in the book 7-8, this is the one I need to look at. All these are your, basically you can put in between your using namespace and your int main with this thing. Now they're all defined as global type with the n to the rate to the count to the function print screens with this thing. Well, this is getting really cumbersome to have a namespace function. You could call of it like this. Okay, so one of the things that you bring in is what's called the resolution, the scope of the variable that you can actually have. So this namespace member has a scope local to the namespace. Now I want to point your attention to these two colon right here. Namespace member can be accessed outside the namespace with this thing. So namespace underscore namespace identifier, the colon is what's called the resolution, scope resolution. Okay, so using namespace or using namespace std semicolon is what you would see it as, and using namespace colon is the identifier with this thing. So std semicolon is the standard file that you would see. So for example, to access the global type that you saw up here, global type, if I want to access this particular n, so global type colon using my scope resolution to access the n. Okay, so you can actually use that in here. As you can see that function global type colon rate, global type resolution, scope resolution, print method, global type, okay, scope resolution, rate. After using the statement, it's not necessarily to use the namespace underscore name colon with this thing. So you can see how this is kind of like being phased out with this thing. Okay, so that's why you have using namespace std semicolon and everything between it. A lot of times, this function that people don't use anymore and becomes standardized, that's becoming a global place that where you can actually put in with it. The key thing is I want you to understand is these colons in here, this right here, that's your scope resolution. That's how you access it. And you use this methods, the namespace function name identifier, or you want to call this thing, to access this particular variable between the curly brackets with that. Okay?